It was a Saturday afternoon, and the house was filled with excitement. My daughter and son-in-law had arrived to visit, bringing with them their newborn daughter, my precious granddaughter. After weeks of waiting, I was finally going to hold her in my arms. I could hardly contain my excitement as I opened the door to welcome them in. The smell of fresh baby lotion filled the air as they entered, and my heart swelled with joy. My granddaughter, only a few weeks old, was wrapped in a soft blanket, her tiny face peeking out. As they handed her to me, I felt a rush of love that only grandparents truly understand. I sat down in my favorite chair, adjusting myself to get comfortable. The moment my granddaughter was placed in my arms, everything else seemed to fade away. She was so tiny, so fragile, and yet so full of life. Her little fingers wrapped around my thumb, and her big eyes stared up at me, full of curiosity. It was a peaceful afternoon, nothing but the soft hum of the house around us. I looked down at my granddaughter, lost in the magic of the moment. She cooed softly, making my heart melt, and I couldn't help but feel blessed to witness this new chapter of life that I settled deeper into my favorite armchair, my granddaughter nestled in my arms. Her little head rested against my chest, and I marveled at the peacefulness of the moment. The room felt warmer, somehow, with her there, her soft breathing filling the silence. I could feel the weight of her small body, and it was as though time had slowed down. As I held her, I couldn't help but reflect on the years that had passed since I'd held my own children this way. It felt like just yesterday that I was a young father, cradling my own newborns, full of dreams and hopes for their futures. Now here I was holding the next generation in my arms. It was a feeling unlike any other, a mix of nostalgia, pride, and love. I smiled down at her, imagining all the memories we would create together. The sunlight filtered through the curtains, casting a soft glow on her face. She blinked her eyes a few times, her gaze locking onto mine for a brief moment before she slowly began to drift off to sleep. Her tiny hands relaxed, her tiny breaths growing more rhythmic as she snuggled into the warmth of my chest. I sat there, almost completely still, taking in the wonder of the moment. There was nothing else in the world that mattered. My granddaughter, my family, and the love we shared were the most important things. I could feel a deep sense of contentment wash over me, knowing that I was part of something so beautiful and pure. As I sat there, completely absorbed in the moment, something unexpected happened. I felt a warmth spreading across my chest, a sensation that caught me off guard. My first thought was that it was just the weight of my granddaughter resting against me. But then I realized something else. Looking down, I saw that my granddaughter had thrown up all over me. It wasn't a small amount either. My shirt, pants, everything was drenched. The smell hit me almost immediately, and I could feel the wetness seeping into my clothes. For a brief moment, I froze. But then I couldn't help it. I burst out laughing. Of course, I muttered to myself, shaking my head in amusement. Here I was, holding this little bundle of joy, and she had just made a mess of me. But strangely enough, I didn't mind one bit. In fact, I felt oddly honored to be the one she had chosen for this moment. After all, babies can't control when they throw up, and I was just part of the process. I gently adjusted her in my arms, trying to keep her comfortable despite the mess. She blinked at me with her wide eyes, as though wondering what had happened. Her face had a touch of innocence, as if she wasn't quite aware of the chaos she'd just caused. I smiled down at her, brushing a strand of hair from her forehead. "It's okay, little one," I whispered softly, trying to reassure her. "You can throw up on me anytime." Despite the mess, I couldn't help but feel a deep sense of warmth. As I continued to hold my granddaughter, I felt an overwhelming surge of love. The smell didn't bother me, nor did the fact that I was covered in baby vomit. This was a moment I wouldn't trade for anything. I gazed down at her, her tiny face now relaxed and peaceful, and I smiled. There was something so pure about the way she trusted me, nestled in my arms without a care in the world. I could feel my heart swelling as I realized how much this little one already meant to me. "Looks like you've decided to make a memory with me," I said softly, chuckling to myself. Her eyes fluttered slightly, and she let out a small, contented sigh. It was as if she knew she had just done something that would make me laugh, and I couldn't help but think that this was just the beginning of many more little adventures like this. I gently patted her back, hoping to ease her discomfort, and continued to cradle her in my arms. The bond we were forming in this simple moment, just her, me, and the mess, felt so special. I knew that I would carry this memory with me forever. It wasn't about the throw-up, the mess, or the chaos. It was about the love that surrounded us, the connection that was growing between us in the most unexpected of ways. For me, this was everything. Just as I was lost in the moment, enjoying the simplicity of it all, I heard the sound of the front door creaking open. My wife had just returned from running errands. I looked up and saw her standing in the doorway, her expression frozen for a brief second as she took in the scene. There I was, sitting in my favorite armchair, holding my granddaughter who had just thrown up all over me. My clothes were soaked, and I'm sure I looked like I had just been through a disaster. But instead of panic or frustration, I was smiling, still cradling the little one in my arms. My wife blinked twice, then took a few slow steps toward us, clearly processing what she had just walked in on. "What on earth happened?" she asked, her tone a mixture of surprise and amusement. I couldn't help but laugh again, brushing my granddaughter's soft hair away from her face. "She's just marking her territory," I said with a grin. "Apparently, I'm the chosen one to receive her gifts." My wife shook her head, the corners of her mouth twitching as she tried to suppress a laugh. "Well, at least you're taking it like a pro," she said, her voice filled with affection. She walked over to us, kneeling down to get a closer look at the little one who was now peacefully resting in my arms. I smiled at my wife, my heart swelling with love not just for my granddaughter, but also for the woman who had been my partner for so many years. Through all the chaos, mess, and unpredictable moments, we had built a life filled with laughter and love. And now, it seemed, we were starting a new chapter with this tiny little person who was already bringing so much joy into our lives. Just as I was lost in the moment, enjoying the simplicity of it all, I heard the sound of the front door creaking open. My wife had just returned from running errands. I looked up and saw her standing in the doorway, her expression frozen for a brief second as she took in the scene. There I was, sitting in my favorite armchair, holding my granddaughter who had just thrown up all over me. My clothes were soaked, and I'm sure I looked like I had just been through a disaster. But instead of panic or frustration, I was smiling, still cradling the little one in my arms. My wife blinked twice, then took a few slow steps toward us, clearly processing what she had just walked in on. "What on earth happened?" she asked, her tone a mixture of surprise and amusement. I couldn't help but laugh again, brushing my granddaughter's soft hair away from her face. "She's just marking her territory," I said with a grin. "Apparently, I'm the chosen one to receive her gifts." My wife shook her head, the corners of her mouth twitching as she tried to suppress a laugh. "Well, at least you're taking it like a pro," she said, her voice filled with affection. She walked over to us, kneeling down to get a closer look at the little one who was now peacefully resting in my arms. I smiled at my wife, my heart swelling with love not just for my granddaughter, but also for the woman who had been my partner for so many years. Through all the chaos, mess, and unpredictable moments, we had built a life filled with laughter and love. And now, it seemed, we were starting a new chapter with this tiny little person who was already bringing so much joy into our lives. My wife took a deep breath as she observed the scene. For a moment, she just stared at me, her expression a mix of disbelief and amusement. I couldn't help but chuckle at the sight. There I was, holding my granddaughter, and covered in baby vomit, yet still completely content. She shook her head slowly, her lips curling into a smile. "You've got to be kidding me," she said with a laugh, her voice soft but filled with affection. "You really don't mind, do you?" I smiled back at her, shaking my head. "Not at all. This little one is worth every bit of it." I looked down at my granddaughter, who was now peacefully resting, blissfully unaware of the mess she had caused. "It's just a part of the experience. I wouldn't change a thing." My wife walked over to us, her eyes softening as she took in the sight. She reached out and gently touched my granddaughter's tiny hand, her fingers brushing against the delicate skin. "I swear, I don't know how you do it," she said, her voice full of admiration. "You always seem to handle everything with such calm." I glanced at her, laughing. "I've had practice. Besides, she's my granddaughter. A little mess is nothing compared to the joy she brings." My wife shook her head, still smiling. "You make it look easy." Then, as though on cue, she turned and headed for the bathroom to grab a towel. "Let's clean you up, Grandpa. You're a mess, but you're still a good sport." I couldn't help but chuckle at how accustomed we had both become to the chaos of life. No matter what, we had learned how to laugh through it all, especially when it came to our family. This moment, messy and unexpected as it was, felt like just another memory in the making. As my wife returned with a towel, she started gently dabbing at my clothes, wiping away the mess. Her movements were so familiar, so comforting, that it made me smile even more. Over the years, she had always been the one to take charge when things got a little messy, and she did so with such grace. It didn't matter whether it was something small or a big ordeal. She knew exactly how to handle it. "All right, Grandpa," she said, her voice teasing but warm. "Let's get you cleaned up so you can hold her again. You've earned it." I chuckled, glancing down at my granddaughter, who was now looking up at me with those big, innocent eyes. She wasn't fazed by the mess she'd caused at all. In fact, it seemed like she was enjoying the attention, as she cooed softly and grabbed onto my finger once more. "You're a little troublemaker, aren't you?" I whispered to her, brushing a lock of hair away from her face. Her tiny hand gripped mine tighter, as if she understood every word I said. It was moments like these that made me feel like I was exactly where I needed to be. My wife finished wiping off most of the mess, and I could see the amusement still dancing in her eyes. She leaned over and kissed the top of my granddaughter's head before turning her attention back to me. "They're all better," she said, giving me a playful nudge. "I think you're officially a grandpa now. You've passed the test." I laughed, shaking my head. "I guess so. But let's be honest, she's already got me wrapped around her little finger." I looked down at my granddaughter again, who was now peacefully settled in my arms. Her tiny form was so light, so delicate, and in that moment, I realized just how precious these little moments truly were. "I love you both," I whispered, a quiet thought, but one that felt incredibly powerful. As I sat there, still holding my granddaughter, my wife took a step back, smiling softly at the two of us. She had always known how to find the beauty in the chaos, and now she was sharing in the joy of this moment. The room was filled with a quiet peace, the only sound being the soft breaths of my granddaughter, who was once again drifting off to sleep. My wife sat down beside me, her hand resting gently on my shoulder. "You know," she began, her voice calm and thoughtful, "there are some moments in life that are just perfect, even if they don't go exactly as planned." I glanced at her, feeling a wave of gratitude. "Yeah," I said softly, looking down at the little one in my arms. "This is one of those moments." We sat there in silence for a while, just enjoying the simplicity of the scene. My wife and I, side by side, watching our granddaughter sleep peacefully in my arms. I realized that life wasn't about the big, grand events. It was about these small, everyday moments, the ones where you find joy even in the mess. As the afternoon sun began to dip lower in the sky, I felt a deep sense of contentment. We had been through so much in our lives together, and now here we were, sharing a new chapter with the next generation. I knew that this was a memory that would stay with me forever. The day I held my granddaughter for the first time, the day she threw up on me, and the day my wife walked in and shared in the laughter and love. "I'll never forget this," I said quietly, my voice full of emotion. "Me neither," my wife replied, her smile warm and knowing. As the evening rolled in, we found ourselves in a comfortable silence. My wife went to prepare dinner while I stayed in my chair, still cradling my granddaughter. The mess had been cleaned up, but the memory of it lingered, adding a layer of warmth to the moment. I thought about how much life had changed since I was a father, and how being a grandfather was a completely different experience. As a parent, I was often caught up in the demands of raising children, getting everything perfect, trying to control the chaos. But now, as a grandfather, I could see things from a new perspective. It wasn't about perfection or control. It was about patience, love, and embracing every little mess along the way. With my granddaughter in my arms, I realized that the moments we often try to avoid, like the ones when things go wrong or when life feels messy, are often the ones that teach us the most. They teach us patience, understanding, and the kind of love that's not afraid of imperfection. My wife called from the kitchen. "Dinner's almost ready, honey. Are you okay with your little friend here?" I smiled to myself. Of course. She's the best company. As I looked down at my granddaughter, I realized how lucky I was. Life had brought me full circle. From a young father learning how to navigate the world of parenthood to a grandfather who could sit back and appreciate the beauty of it all. I was no longer in a rush to fix everything. Instead, I was learning to just be in the moment, to appreciate the little things, and to find joy in the messy, unexpected parts of life. As dinner was prepared and the evening unfolded, I continued to hold my granddaughter in my arms, savoring the simplicity of the moment. The soft glow of the setting sun cast a warm light across the room, and for a brief moment, it felt like time had stopped. My wife had set the table, and the smell of our favorite meal filled the air, adding to the sense of calm that seemed to envelop the house. My granddaughter stirred a little, her tiny fingers reaching up as if to explore the world around her. I looked down at her, marveling at how something so small could bring so much joy into a room. There were so many milestones I had yet to witness in her life, and I couldn't wait to be there for them all. Do you think she'll ever remember this? I asked my wife softly, looking up from my granddaughter to meet her gaze. She paused, then smiled gently. Probably not, but she'll always know the love behind the moments. And that's what matters. I nodded, agreeing with her words. The love we shared as a family would be felt in every hug, every laugh, every quiet moment together. Even if my granddaughter wouldn't remember this exact day, she would carry the warmth of these experiences with her, like a gentle undercurrent throughout her life. The mess, the laughter, and the tender moments we shared today would be part of the story of her childhood. And I knew that as she grew older, she would come to understand the importance of those small, seemingly insignificant moments that, when woven together, formed the fabric of a beautiful life. "All right, Grandpa," my wife said with a playful grin. "It's time to let her down for a bit. You've got her for long enough." Reluctantly, I placed my granddaughter in her bassinet, her tiny body shifting to find a comfortable position. I watched her for a moment, feeling that deep sense of fulfillment wash over me. Then, as I stood up and joined my wife at the dinner table, I couldn't help but reflect on how far we had come. From the chaotic days of raising children to the peaceful moments of grandparenthood, I realized that life's real beauty wasn't in the perfection of each day, but in the imperfections we embraced and the love we gave and received along the way. "Today was perfect," I said, my voice filled with warmth. "Yes, it was," my wife agreed, her smile reflecting the same sentiment. And in that moment, I knew that no matter how many messes or surprises life threw my way, the love we shared would always be the constant that held everything together.